You did everything right, so why are you still broke? You were handed a shiny participation trophy, promised the absolute American dream on a silver platter, and repeatedly told that a college degree was your golden ticket to a house with a two-car garage. You worked twice as hard as your parents did at your age. You hustled, you ground it out. Yet somehow, you are completely unable to afford the baseline, boring, middle-class life that was considered perfectly normal just one generation ago. Wait, are you just bad with money? No, the game was literally rigged while you were busy playing it. In 2020, the Pew Research Center released a devastating, data-driven confirmation of your absolute worst fears. Millennials are officially the very first generation in modern history projected to be worse off financially than their parents. Let that sink in. You are living through a massive, systemic downgrade. But the financial ruin is just the surface level. The real crisis is happening deep inside your head. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. It is the agonizing mental friction of holding two completely contradictory realities at the exact same time. You were raised to believe you were a unique, world-changing visionary, but society treats you like a totally disposable cog in a ruthless corporate machine. In her landmark book, Generation Me, psychologist Jean Twenge uncovered a terrifying paradox about people born between 1981 and 1996. You score unprecedentedly high in narcissistic traits, but you also suffer from absolutely crippling, severe anxiety. You think you are incredibly special, but you are utterly terrified that you are entirely worthless. You are not a thriving adult. You are a walking trauma response with a LinkedIn profile. How did an entire generation break like this? Look at the chronological whiplash. Think back to the late 80s and 90s. You remember the neon colors, the dial-up internet, the absolute certainty that the future was bright. The self-esteem movement was in full aggressive swing. Helicopter parents hovered over your every single move, patting the playground corners, inflating your fragile ego, and shielding you from every conceivable failure. You were pumped full of unearned confidence and proudly sent out into the world. And then, bam, you graduated directly into the catastrophic 2008 recession. Banks failed, industries crumbled, and your starting salary evaporated before you even printed your resume. The rug wasn't just pulled out from under you. The entire floor collapsed into a terrifying black hole. You went from being the absolute center of the universe to begging for an unpaid internship in a brutal, collapsing job market. And right when your brain was desperately trying to forge a stable adult identity, the tech industry dropped a nuclear bomb on your psychology. Facebook and Instagram launched exactly during your most vulnerable, formative years. Suddenly, the comparison game wasn't just your local high school, it was the entire planet. You were forced to digitize your identity. You watched your peers broadcast their fake highlight reels while you silently panicked in your childhood bedroom. Dr. Tim Kasser's extensive research on materialism completely exposes this nightmare. He proved that treating your life as a curated performance for external validation absolutely tanks your mental health. You started optimizing your hobbies, filtering your face, and monetizing your passions just to feel seen. You traded authentic human connection for a toxic dopamine drip of cheap digital likes. Every single day feels completely exhausting because you aren't just living anymore. You are managing a personal brand. You are running a grueling 24/7 political campaign for your own existence, desperately trying to win over an audience that does not care about you. Your delayed adulthood is not a personal failure. It is a mathematical certainty. You are trapped in an endless cycle of performative exhaustion, desperately trying to prove your worth to avoid, constantly wondering. You were told 30 was the finish line. a house, a spouse, 2 kids, and a riding lawnmower. But look around right now. Millions of 30 and 40 somethings are currently trapped in a bizarre developmental purgatory. They are actively waiting for their actual, real lives to finally start. Wait, think about that for a second. An entire generation feels like they are just sitting in a massive metaphorical waiting room. Except, this waiting room is actually a $2,200 a month studio apartment with a leaky ceiling and paper-thin walls. Oh, and your therapist is completely booked solid until next March, so good luck talking about it. You aren't just falling behind, you are actively being held back by a broken system. The traditional milestones of adulthood have been painfully, systematically delayed across the board. Marriage? Pushed back into your late 30s. Homeownership? A literal financial fantasy unless you have a trust fund. Children? Way too expensive to even seriously consider when you can barely afford eggs. This isn't just a widespread economic crisis. It is a profound, crushing psychological weight. Clinical psychologists call this specific phenomenon allostatic load. It is the severe cumulative wear and tear on your biological system when you are constantly exposed to chronic, inescapable stress. Imagine being permanently stuck on the loading screen of your own life. You are just sitting there, staring at a progress bar that hasn't moved a single pixel in an entire decade. You did everything right. You mashed all the right buttons, but the game absolutely refuses to load. Your brain is constantly redlining, processing the intense stress of a literal survival situation while you are just standing in line trying to buy groceries. But here's the real kicker. The deepest, most painful wound isn't actually the empty bank account. It is the absolute, devastating betrayal of the social contract. We were all sold one very specific, very shiny promise growing up. Effort equals outcome. Work hard, get good grades, go to a good school, get the degree, and you automatically get the comfortable middle-class dream. Period. That was the undisputed deal. But what actually happened when you finally stepped into the real world? The floor completely vanished beneath your feet. You walked out of your graduation ceremony and stepped straight into an economic buzzsaw. College suddenly cost 10 times more than it did for your parents' generation. You eagerly applied for a basic entry-level job only to find out it requires 5 years of senior-level experience. Wait, how does that even make sense? It doesn't. You were handed an $80,000 piece of paper and thrown into a ruthless gig economy that offers absolutely zero benefits, zero security, and zero corporate loyalty. You are literally driving strangers around on the weekends just to pay the monthly interest on a massive loan you took out when you were legally still a teenager. This creates a massive, violent psychological collision in your mind. Clinicians refer to this exact crisis as schema disruption. A schema is basically your brain's fundamental blueprint for how the world is supposed to work. When reality fundamentally, repeatedly, and violently violates your core beliefs about fairness, effort, and reward, your brain literally goes into shock. You aren't just casually burned out from working too hard. You are experiencing the profound, unacknowledged grief of a stolen future. Your foundational understanding of reality has been entirely shattered by a system that lied to you. And when an entire generation experiences this exact same schema disruption at the exact same time, it stops being a personal failure and transforms into a massive collective trauma. This trauma didn't just make you tired or unmotivated. It completely, irreversibly rewired how you relate to every single institution, corporation, and authority figure on Earth, which perfectly sets up the absolute truth behind why this specific generation is simultaneously fiercely idealistic, deeply cynical, and entirely unapologetic about. Boomers love calling us job-hopping mercenaries with zero corporate loyalty. But let's get the timeline completely straight. Corporate America took a flamethrower to the social contract long before we ever entered the workforce. They quietly stripped away the guaranteed pensions that kept our grandparents secure. They normalized the brutal, unannounced Friday afternoon mass layoffs over Zoom. They took secure, entry-level careers and violently chopped them up into endless, benefit-free contract gigs with no healthcare. We didn't assassinate corporate loyalty. We simply woke up and realized the company would post our job opening before our obituary even hit the local papers. Why on earth would you pledge undying allegiance to a sterile corporate machine that openly treats you like a completely interchangeable, disposable battery? Millennials aren't flaky. We are highly adaptive survivors navigating a deeply toxic economic landscape. Look at our unique psychological profile. Millennials are factually the most educated generation in human history. We are the most demographically diverse. We are the first true internet native cohort. Having the entire world's knowledge in our pockets didn't make us lazy or distracted. It turned us into relentless, hyper-aware, critical thinkers. We were explicitly trained by the internet to interrogate a deeply broken status quo. We learned to ask why. Why work 80 hours for a CEO who makes 300 times your salary? Why accept unpaid internships as a badge of honor? And what was our reward for this critical thinking? Being aggressively, relentlessly gaslit. We were slapped with the label of entitled snowflakes by the exact same demographic that bought 3-bedroom homes on a single department store salary. Wait, stop and think about the ultimate mental health paradox we are trapped inside. Millennials are undeniably the heroic generation that finally dragged therapy out of the shadows and into the daylight. We completely destigmatized taking antidepressants. We normalized talking openly about boundaries, toxic environments, and systemic burnout. We are doing the incredibly hard generational trauma work. Yet, we are being forced to heal our minds while actively drowning in objectively terrifying, hostile economic conditions. It is a completely impossible task. You try doing deep shadow work and inner child healing while your apartment rent goes up 40% in 2 years and your wages stay completely flat. We are desperately trying to meditate on the deck of a rapidly sinking ship. And then there's the inescapable existential dread, the crushing, suffocating daily weight of climate anxiety. We are constantly, aggressively told that it is our direct personal responsibility to somehow save a rapidly dying planet. Stop using plastic straws, buy an expensive electric car, canvas tote bag your way out of a global ecological catastrophe. It is a profoundly cruel irony. We are being tasked with manually reversing an entire century of devastating industrial damage, yet we hold absolutely zero real institutional power. We are supposed to save the rainforests while billionaires take private jets to buy groceries and megacorporations dump toxic sludge into the oceans. So let's emphatically settle this right here, right now. Look at me. You are not broken. You are not fundamentally lazy. You are not overly anxious, and you are definitely not a fragile failure. Your entire psychological profile makes perfect, rational, predictable sense. You are responding exactly how any logical human being would respond when the map they were given no longer matches the actual territory. They handed us a beautifully illustrated map leading straight to the 1990s American dream, and then they dropped us directly into a dystopian, late-stage gig economy nightmare. Your crippling anxiety isn't a chemical imbalance, it is just highly accurate situational awareness. You are doing everything right in a world that went completely wrong. If you felt that in your chest, I need you to hit subscribe. Click the join button right below this video to become an official channel member, and stick around for more deep dives into the psychology of our generation. Because no matter what the headlines say, boomers love calling us job-hopping mercenaries with zero corporate loyalty.